Chapter 1700. Realizing that he couldn't win quickly, the ancient Dipankara Buddha switched to fighting with Neza. He had the geographical advantage and was not afraid of a war of attrition. In order to prevent himself from being injured, he prioritized self-protection and slowly wore Neza out. That was understandable. Neza was also a veteran. Of course, he knew that it would be disadvantageous for him in the long run. However, if he advanced blindly and became impatient, not only would it be difficult for him to defeat his opponent, but his opponent might also take advantage of him. Therefore, although he maintained pressure on the Dipankara ancient Buddha and attacked more and more urgently, his mind remained calm and orderly. Although he was fast, he was not in a mess. He looked for the opponent's flaws and from there, he expanded his advantage and strived to end the battle as soon as possible. At the end of the day, speed was not the goal but victory. In Yang Jian's eyes, Neza was like that in the beginning, but as time passed, the situation gradually changed. Neza was getting more and more anxious. It was not only in his fighting style, but also in his mentality. This was obviously different from what he had expected. If this continued, he would lose control. Yin Zhaoge, Yin Di and Yang Jian exchanged looks. Being in the midst of the situation, he has discovered something that we bystanders are unable to detect. Yin Di frowned. Or is it that he has hidden worries of his own, having no choice but to do so? Yin Zhaoge looked at the battle between Neza and the Dipankara ancient Buddha and murmured, Taoist Neza was once tainted by the viciousness and killing intent. However, with the help of the Tai cultivated deity, he should have already been purified. There shouldn't be any remnants left. However, from the looks of it, it seems like it's about to relapse. According to perfected Tai, Neza's original problem should not recur. However, the enemy he was facing this time was not ordinary. If he fought with all his strength, it was hard to say whether there would be any special changes. On the one hand, the ancient Dipankara Buddha was strong enough and needed Neza to go all out. On the other hand, Neza hated him to the core. This was one of the reasons why Neza was tainted by his murderous intent. This place is filled with Buddha light. While it would have a suppressive effect on people, there's also an advantage to it. This blessed land's Buddhism is also very effective in suppressing evil qi and killing intent. Yin Zhaoge narrowed his eyes. Logically speaking, Neza shouldn't have a relapse. Even if there was a possibility of a relapse, it wouldn't happen in the Western Pure Lands. Unless there's another reason. Yang Jian didn't move, but on his forehead, a bright light suddenly appeared, and a vertical crack appeared on his skin. Suddenly, a vertical eye appeared on Yang Jian's forehead, which was the third eye that could scan the entire universe. Seeing this, the invincible Vajra Buddha and Guanyin Bodhisattva looked at each other. We can't hide it anymore. Yang Jian opened his third heaven eye and gazed at Neza. Neza didn't look any different from before, but multicolored lights were flickering in the depths of his pupils. Primordial Heart Devil, Yang Jian snorted coldly. Randang, aren't you ashamed? Dipankara Buddha's expression remained unchanged, and he said lightly, You're exaggerating. Neza's resentment was too strong, and it gave birth to inner demons. The primordial heart demon took advantage of it. You really can't blame me. If Neza feels unwell and wants to suppress his inner demons, I don't mind. Today's battle can be considered a draw. Dream on. Neza shouted. However, his movements immediately slowed down a little, suppressing and adjusting himself. Dipankara Buddha, aren't you pushing the blame away too cleanly? Yin Zhaoge raised his brows. It's fine if it's other places. However, this is the Western Pure Lands. Without the Amitabha Buddha's approval, without your approval, how could the primordial heart devil do anything? Due to his temperament and hatred towards Dipankara Buddha, Neza's mental state had a flaw. However, with his control over himself, he could suppress these inner demons and slay them without disturbing himself. However, if the primordial heart devil personally took action, it might become a huge hidden threat. Especially when Neza was currently fighting against Dipankara Buddha, the primordial heart devil might take advantage of the situation. After Neza's first tribulation, he was reborn due to the lotus incarnation and obtained the treasured lotus celestial body. With that, he wasn't afraid of most of the evil arts in this world. However, The heart devil originated from within himself. Even Neza's treasured lotus celestial body couldn't do anything against it. He could only rely on himself to suppress it. The primordial heart devil didn't need to make a huge move. Instead, it could silently influence Neza, causing the flaw to become bigger and bigger, until it couldn't be mended anymore. That was what he was best at doing. Neza was originally focused on fighting Dipankara Buddha. The primordial heart devil had the secret cover of the Buddhists. Even Neza himself couldn't detect the other party's secret tricks. Now that he realized it, Neza was naturally furious. However, the more emotional he was, the easier it was for him to be invaded by the primordial heart devil. Hence, Neza had no choice but to work hard to stabilize his mental state. Dipankara, it seems like you don't want to fight one-on-one. You want to fight two-on-two? Yang Jian's voice wasn't loud, but the pure land of Buddhism that everyone was in seemed to be about to collapse instantly. Dipankara Buddha smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. From the beginning to the end, I didn't want to provoke a war. Since you've accepted the battle, let's follow the rules." Yang Jian said quietly, "Now that you're not following the rules, everyone doesn't have to. Neza, go and recuperate. I'll fight with you. I think Amipa won't mind. There's no need for senior apprentice brother to do anything. I'll recover very quickly." As Neza spoke, he stood on the void and resisted the heart devil's invasion with all his might. He closed his eyes and waved his hand towards Yang Jian, Yin Zhaoga, and Yin Di, indicating that he was fine and could be dealt with appropriately. As expected, after not fighting with others, Neza's strength allowed him to stabilize his body's condition in an instant. His skin was originally as white as jade. Now colorful colors appeared on the surface of his body. However, the colorful lights flashed and disappeared very quickly. Neza opened his eyes again and stared at Dipankara Buddha. Just as he was about to speak, his expression suddenly changed. Faint black chi emitted from his body. The black chi didn't harm or entangle Neza. Instead, it looked like someone was pulling it out from Neza's body. Neza couldn't help but feel shocked. Yin Zhaoga was puzzled at first. Then he suddenly thought of something and came to a realization. Six-eared macaque. He blurted out. Yin Di, Yang Jian, and Neza also understood what was going on. Previously, they had heard Yin Zhaoga talking about the relationship between the great sage equaling heavens, traveling monk sun, and six-eared macaque. They knew that six-eared macaque was formed by traveling monk sun's heart devil. That was a miraculous scene that only happened once in a blue moon. It was the result of many factors working together. Even the 9 underworld's devils couldn't do the same. However, today, the primordial heart devil wanted to recreate the six-eared macaque's incident. He wanted Neza's heart devil to transform into another unparalleled expert. Chapter 1701. The primordial heart devil's help was equivalent to helping the ancient Dipankara Buddha out of his predicament. Of course, Nine Nether wouldn't do it for free. She was helping the Dipankara ancient Buddha to deal with Neza's challenge, so she naturally had to find a way to get the corresponding benefits. Now, trying to turn Neza's inner demon into another unparalleled expert was one of the contents of the deal. Unlike traveling monk Sun, who was still at the grand virtual realm, Neza was now a top-notch expert in the grand heavenly realm. It was naturally not easy for the 9 underworlds to plot against him. However, Neza's problem inevitably gave the other party a chance. Previously, he was tainted by a thick viciousness and killing intent, something rarely seen throughout the ages. If he truly fell into a sea of blood, then he would be even more savage and tyrannical than the great demons of the 9 underworlds, and even more irrational. Although Neza had already broken free, the source of all this still existed. Li Jing was dead, but Randing still existed. Neza's hatred and indignation were no longer as fierce and violent, but they were more deep-rooted. Right now they were fighting against the Dipankara ancient Buddha. With the Dipankara ancient Buddha and the Western Pure Lands arrangements, the primordial heart devil had the chance to succeed. Neza grunted, and black gas emerged from his body continuously. Then, it scattered in the air and disappeared. The black chi seemed to dissipate under the illumination of the Buddha light. However, looking carefully, Yin Zhaoge and the others did not see any collision between the black qi and the Buddha light. Yang Jian stretched out his hand and beckoned at Neza. Neza flew backward and came before Yang Jian. He stretched out his hand and pressed his palm on Neza's back. Neza's eyes were closed, but his body was still surrounded by black gas. With his current condition, it seems like it's no longer suitable for him to make a move. The ancient Dipankara Buddha smiled and said, "Why don't we call it a draw for today's battle? What do you think? Whether you want to stop the primordial heart devil or not, you can leave to deal with it. Forgive me for not sending you off." Yang Jian looked at him. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Junior brother Neza isn't convenient, so let's fight. You can still ask the primordial heart devil to help you. Please forgive me for not being able to keep you company." Dipankara ancient Buddha put his palms together and chanted softly. The unbreakable Vajra Buddha, Guanyin Bodhisattva, and the other Buddhist venerables did the same. The Western Pure Land's Buddhist radiance instantly shone brightly. In the vast void, countless Buddhist kingdoms shone brightly. The radiance formed a whole, repelling Yin Zhaoge, Yang Jian, and the others, attempting to send them out of the Western Pure Lands. No matter if it was the grand heavenly realm Yang Jian and Neza, or the grand virtual realm Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di, they all felt immense pressure, forcing them to retreat. That was the entire Western Pure Lands movement. Although it couldn't harm Yin Zhaoge and the others, it formed an irresistible majestic force. Buddha Amitabha did not make a move, but this Pure Land was ultimately the supreme holy land of Buddhism that he had created. Yang Jian's eyes flickered slightly, and all the bones in his body shook slightly. As he trembled, the Buddhist light on his body was being continuously dispersed. Affected by this, the Buddha light of the Western Pure Lands automatically gathered towards him, insisting on sending him out. However, Yang Jian stood on the spot without moving. Without the Amitabha Buddha personally making a move, the entire Western Pure Lands seemed to be unable to do anything to Yang Jian. "Why must you be so stubborn, Taoist?" The Dipankara ancient Buddha shook his head and sighed. Under his control, the boundless Buddha light no longer pressed towards Yang Jian. Instead, it went past Yang Jian and targeted Yin Zhaoge and the others. Currently, Neza's entire body was shrouded in black qi. Under the influence of this, he wasn't even as free as Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di. As the Buddha light descended, it didn't affect the black qi at all. Yin Zhaoge took over Yang Jian's position and went behind Neza. He extended his palm and pressed on Neza's back. Open! Radiance of divinity appeared above Yin Zhaoge's head. As the radiance flickered, numerous runes flew out from within and connected to form a chain-like existence. They intersected with each other and formed a ring, enveloping Neza and Yin Zhaoge within. With Yin Zhaoge and Neza as the center, the rings formed by runes revolved in different directions. From the looks of it, it was as if a temporary spherical heavenly devil-slaying ritual had appeared. Compared to the ritual that Yin Zhaoge used to help Chen Xuanzong in the past, the current spherical heavenly devil-slaying ritual seemed much smaller. However, it also seemed boundlessly vast. After being suppressed by the spherical heavenly devil-slaying ritual, the black qi on Neza's body was no longer as rampant as before. With the six-eared macaques incident in the past, it wouldn't be easy for me to do the same thing again. Yin Zhaoge looked at the Dipankara ancient Buddha and said, "From the looks of it, you don't intend to help the 9 underworlds succeed." The Dipankara ancient Buddha looked at the spherical heavenly devil-slaying ritual enveloping Yin Zhaoge and Neza with a look of admiration. After hearing Yin Zhaoge's words, he smiled. "Leave it to fate." Ancient Buddha, since when did you become someone who leaves it to fate? As Yin Zhaoge resisted against the Buddha light's repulsion, he sneered. "The 9 underworlds wouldn't help you just because of fate." One of the contents of the transaction was that 9 Nether would search for the Wuxia apricot yellow flag on his behalf. The Western Pure Lands weren't worried that the 9 underworlds would take the treasures for themselves. On one hand, the 9 underworlds had the white cloud-bound flag to begin with. On the other hand, the Buddhist bigwigs had grasped an important bargaining chip that the other party had no choice but to pay attention to. In this way, on the surface, it seemed that the ancient Dipankara Buddha had finally accepted Neza's challenge. However, The two of them weren't the only ones involved in this battle. The true place to decide the victor wasn't in the Western Pure Lands. For the ancient Dipankara Buddha, even if he were to lose to Neza, or even be injured, he could accept it as long as it wasn't a serious injury that would cause him to miss the next round of the 9 underworlds. The potential threat of Mahamayuri and the value of seizing the Wuxia apricot yellow flag naturally went without saying. Only, after being exposed by Yin Zhaoge, the Dipankara ancient Buddha's heart was filled with a layer of gloominess. Unfortunately, at this moment, Yin Zhaoge waved his hand at him, as if he was bidding farewell. Let's leave it to fate. The Wuxia apricot yellow flag shall follow your fate as well. As his voice resounded, Yin Zhaoge, Yin Di and Neza's figures disappeared from the void. They were forcefully repelled by the Western Pure Lands Buddha light. However, Yang Jian was still within the Western Pure Lands. Since you've invited the primordial heart devil to greet junior apprentice brother Neza, I'll greet you on his behalf. As Yang Jian spoke, he held the 3-pointed double-edged saber in his hand horizontally. The saber's edge pointed towards the ancient Dipankara Buddha and slashed. His attack was even more ferocious than Neza's. The ancient Dipankara Buddha could only calm himself down and deal with it. He didn't have the time to think about the Wuxia apricot yellow flag anymore. At the same time, Yin Zhaoge and the other two were thrown out by the Western Pure Lands. What made Yin Zhaoge troubled was that he was separated from Yin Di and Neza due to the Buddha light's influence. When the three of them were thrown out, they entered different spaces. Yin Zhaoge was originally planning to use the improved spherical heavenly devil slaying ritual to help Neza suppress the abnormalities brought about by the primordial heart devil. However, the great spatial shift just now had disrupted this process. Fortunately, the spherical heavenly devil slaying ritual had been continuously improved by Yin Zhaoge. Now its effects were even better than before. Not only was the spherical heavenly devil slaying ritual easy to set up, it didn't require too many materials to support it. Yin Zhaoge could casually prepare it, and its stability had greatly increased. Chapter 1704. As Yin Zhaoge's figure changed, his palms blotted out the skies and concealed the sun, plucking the stars and grabbing the moon. He first grabbed the Sweet Dew Wisdom King's battle avatar atop the spreading Dharma Buddha's head. Seeing this, the lotus platform spreading Dharma Buddha looked into the distance, not anxious or impatient. The Sweet Dew Wisdom King avatar with 4 faces and 8 arms actually shattered on its own. The thing hidden in the avatar was revealed. It was a wooden stick that was only 3 to 4 inches long. There were 3 iron rings on the wooden stick. Invisible dragon rod? Yin Zhaoge's eyes flashed. This treasure was refined by Manjushri Heavenly Venerable Guang Fa in the past. He made a name for himself during the ancient era, and later on, he bestowed it to Jinja. After the master and disciple entered Buddhism from Taoism, the invisible dragon rod was also named Golden Lotus of 7 Treasures, with outstanding power and a prominent reputation. For the sake of safety, the lotus platform spreading Dharma Buddha did not activate the treasure immediately. Instead, he hid the treasure deep in his Dharmakaya and waited for an opportunity to act. With Yin Zhaoge's overwhelming strength, the spreading Dharma Buddha on the lotus platform decided to lure the enemy deeper, allowing him to grab his Sweet Dew Wisdom King avatar. Then, he exerted the invisible dragon rod with all his might, hoping to land a direct hit on Yin Zhaoge, so that he wouldn't be able to dodge or block it. As soon as the invisible dragon rod appeared, it grew in the wind and became bigger. The 3 small metal rings on it also rapidly expanded to form 3 rings of light, flickering with 7 colors as they shot towards Yin Zhaoge's body. This treasure was miraculous. 3 rainbow-colored halos locked onto the person, 1 on the neck, 1 on the waist, and the last on the ankle. The more the person moved, the tighter the chains became. This time, if he was really pinned down, Yin Zhaoge wouldn't have it easy either. However, he had long heard of invisible dragon rod. It seemed that he directly reached out to grab the Sweet Dew Wisdom King. But in fact, he had been secretly guarding against this move. Seeing the 3 rings of light coming towards him at this moment, Yin Zhaoge did not evade, just opening and closing the fingers of his right hand, as though he was playing a pipa. changing them repeatedly. In the eyes of the lotus platform spreading Dharma Buddha, Yin Zhaoge's right hand's 5 fingers seemed to be clenched into a fist, and also seemed to be opened into a palm. Upon a closer look, it seemed like only a finger was extended out. As the 5 fingers swayed gently, they seemed illusory and real at the same time. It was as if they were both tangible and intangible. As if they were both tangible and intangible. Chapter 1706. Thank you for reminding us. We're already prepared for the 5G apricot yellow flag. Master and Senior Apprentice Uncle Southern Extremity are keeping an eye on it. Once the Western Pure Lands and the 9 underworlds do anything, we'll immediately follow up, said Neza. Before he entered the Western Pure Lands to challenge the Dipankara ancient Buddha, Yin Zhaoge had already mentioned this to the Tai cultivated deity. Yin Zhaoge felt that other than the White Xiong's death, there might be other reasons for the Dipankara ancient Buddha to accept Neza's challenge. If Yin Zhaoge brought himself into the Dipankara ancient Buddha's situation, he would want to take advantage of the situation, or make other preparations. Otherwise, accepting Neza's challenge would be risky, and the benefits would be minimal. The two wouldn't be worth it. Of course, the Dipankara ancient Buddha had many choices. However, Yin Zhaoge felt that the most pressing problem for him was the Buddha's relic. If the relic fell into the hands of the demon race, and the orthodox Buddhism lost the green lotus flag, Mahamayuri might pose a threat that was hard to deal with. Regarding this loss, the Western Pure Lands urgently needed to reduce their losses and resolve the troubles and pressure that might arise in the future. As such, Yin Zhaoge felt that the Dipankara ancient Buddha might have his eyes on the 5G apricot yellow flag. Yang Jian wanted to accompany Neza into the Western Pure Lands, while the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor was searching for the 5G apricot yellow flag. As such, Yin Zhaoge asked the Tai cultivated deity to make preparations together with the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. He even contacted other Taoism bigwigs. If the 5G apricot yellow flag really appeared, they could lend a helping hand. As for him, Yin Di and Yang Jian, they followed Neza into the Western Pure Lands. Feng Yunsheng was waiting for them outside. Only, they weren't sure what the Western Pure Lands would do. Would they secretly divide their forces or seek external help? The arrangements made by the people of the Tao sect were also for the sake of being prepared. When he was thrown out from the Western Pure Lands, Yin Zhaoge immediately contacted Feng Yunsheng. As expected, there were great devils in the vicinity. Not only were they intercepted by Feng Yunsheng, they were also heavily injured. At the same time, Yin Zhaoge also learned from Feng Yunsheng that the Dipankara ancient Buddha's true target was the 5G apricot yellow flag. Although the Western Pure Lands seemed to be distracted by the orthodox Taoism and had to be wary of the demon race, they had no time to spare. But what they carried out was the plan of secretly crossing the sea by deceiving everyone. Through the transaction, the experts of diabolism would help them secretly obtain the Wuxia apricot yellow flag. In the end, perfected Tai and the others, who were already prepared, took advantage of the situation and did not let the other party take the lead. Both sides were currently fighting fiercely for the Wuxia apricot yellow flag. Neza was also present during the discussion. As such, after hearing Yin Zhaoge's words, he nodded and said, "That's right. The Wuxia apricot yellow flag is the thing that old Dipankara values the most in this round. Only when our Taoism retrieves the Wuxia apricot yellow flag can we be considered to have truly won this battle. By then, the demon race will use the Shakyamuni Saraira to command Kong Xian to take action. With the Wuxia apricot yellow flag and the green lotus flag, we won't be afraid. Let's see how Dipankara deals with it." As he spoke, he still felt a little regretful. "Unfortunately, I wasn't able to take him down. The primordial heart devil's final move was truly out of my expectations. Although I guessed that the ancient Dipankara Buddha had other arrangements, I never expected the primordial heart devil to use the same trick as the 6-eared macaque." Yin Zhaoge nodded in agreement. "However, you don't have to mind it too much, Taoist brother." He smiled and said, "With Taoist brother Yang Jian's move, the ancient Dipankara Buddha wouldn't have a good time if he doesn't peel off a layer of his skin. Only the Amitabha Buddha can take care of him." Neza's expression was a little unconvinced, but he was also a little impressed. If I could kill this demon with my own hands, I would truly be able to vent my frustrations. Yin Zhaoge smiled. Although he had experienced many things, Neza's temperament was still the same as the rumors. As the two were talking, Yin Zhaoge's expression changed slightly, and he started pondering. What's wrong? Neza noticed his expression and asked. Yin Zhaoge answered. I've just received news that your master, the Tai cultivated deity, the southern extremity longevity emperor, and the others were in a stalemate with the 9 underworld's great devils. As time dragged on, the news spread, and the demon race was alerted. Now, the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag's battle has implicated more and more people, and the situation is getting more and more chaotic. Neza snorted. I'll be done soon. We'll head over together later. You still have to be careful, Yin Zhaoge said. The primordial heart devil will definitely keep an eye on you. Don't worry. This time I'm prepared. He won't succeed so easily. Neza was eager to fight against the primordial heart devil. With Yin Zhaoge's help, he gradually dispelled the black miasma surrounding his body, and everything returned to normal. The two immediately went on their way. Neza was fine. However, Yin Zhaoge was bothered by the fact that he couldn't contact Yin Di. As such, Feng Yunqing didn't meet up with Yin Zhaoge and Neza. She continued waiting for Yang Jian outside the Western Pure Lands, while searching for Yin Di, who was expelled from the Western Pure Lands. As the two walked, Neza tried to contact his master, the Tai cultivated deity. According to the latest news, the battle for the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag was getting more and more chaotic. Yang Jian was making things difficult for the Dipankara ancient Buddha in the Western Pure Lands. Other than the Amitabha Buddha and Mahamayuri, the other Buddhas of the Blessed Lands couldn't help him. As such, the Buddhas of the Western Pure Lands finally mobilized their forces and rushed over to fight for the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag. Since their true intentions were already exposed, there was no need for them to hide anymore. They might as well go all out and increase their chances of winning. The matter that was originally plotted in secret had already developed into another huge battle. The Yellow Earth Apricot Flag has been lost for a long time. I didn't expect it to see the light of day again. As Neza walked, he sighed. In the past, senior apprentice Uncle Jiang suddenly disappeared. In the end, he still perished. Only I wonder who killed him? Since senior apprentice Uncle Jiang wields the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag, protecting himself shouldn't be a problem. It's hard to say how all things in the world counter each other, Yin Zhaoge said. With the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag in hand, protecting himself wouldn't be a problem under normal circumstances. However, his whereabouts are still unknown. Now it's proven that he met with misfortune. This means that someone managed to break through the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag's protection. However, that person didn't manage to kill him. Instead, that person ran away with heavy injuries and died from his injuries. Neza frowned. The seawater of the 9 underworld's devilish sea's abyss contained the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag. However, they're also searching for it based on the clues given by the Dipankara ancient Buddha. This means that they weren't the ones who did it. However, even Kong Xian couldn't break through the Yellow Earth Apricot Flag. If that Dao ancestor made a move, how could senior apprentice Uncle Jiang escape? Then who did it? Maybe I will linger on and live a mediocre life, and one day I will see them die. I might even have the chance to hit them when they're down, Chu Su said slowly. Or perhaps, they would one day drag me out of my hiding place when I was extremely weak. The Buddha wanted to say something. However, his lips moved, and no sound came out. That's not what I want. Chu Su smiled. I'll avenge my master. Or, I'll die in the hands of the 3 clear lineage's descendants or my enemies. No matter what the outcome is, it's fine. Now when I'm at my strongest, I'll give it my all and personally end everything. That's what I want. Then he pushed his hand forward, and the long sword returned to its sheath. Then, he nodded towards the fellow Taoists in front of him, stood on the white lotus, and slowly rose upwards. The Buddha looked at Chu Su with a complicated gaze. After a moment of silence, he said, the one who caused the lotus platform spreading Dharma Buddha to perish isn't Neza, but Yin Zhaoge. After killing the lotus platform spreading Dharma Buddha, Yin Zhaoge didn't obstruct the Buddha light imbued with faith power from returning to the blessed lands of the White Lotus. For the current him, there was no longer a need to conceal his killing of the heretics. Due to the immortal extermination formation, even if a stronger heretic expert were to descend for revenge, the strongest expert would only be in the grand heavenly realm. It wouldn't be the immeasurable heavenly Lord or the future Buddha. As such, the blessed lands of the White Lotus knew who did it. Yin Zhaoge? Chu Su's eyes lit up slightly. He's near the Western heretic Buddhist lands. We don't know where he is right now, but the Wuxia apricot yellow flag might have appeared. He's most likely with the other 3 clear successors to obtain this treasure. The Buddha said, Senior Marshal Brother, why don't you go and take a look? There are currently many experts gathered there. Still, the situation is chaotic, as the various major powers are entangled with one another. It would instead be beneficial for you to directly seek revenge on that Yin Zhaoge. At the very least, it would be better than charging into the strongholds of the descendants of the 3 clear lineages. After thanking him, Chu Su sat cross-legged on the White Lotus and flew out of the Buddhist kingdom on its back. Remember the mobile URL, m. Chapter 1709. Chu Su exited the blessed lands of the White Lotus and headed towards the Yellow Earth apricot flag's location. Despite the distance, Chu Su had already ascended to the grand heavenly realm. In an instant he arrived at the outskirts. However, due to the subsequent battles between experts, space became chaotic. He could only slowly move closer. Currently, Yin Zhaoge and Neza had already entered. Rampant devilish qi, demonic qi, Buddha radiances and even Taoism's clear qi filled the area. They clashed against each other intensely. Neza couldn't hold himself back anymore. He stepped on the wind-fire wheels and raised his fire-tipped spear. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a fiery dragon, rampaging forward. Wherever the blazing flames passed, the devilish qi, demonic qi, and Buddha radiances were all incinerated, turning into the flame's fuel. The domineering aura caused the immortals and devils to temporarily avoid it. However, an unexpected person blocked Neza's path. Rumbling thunderbolts swept over and clashed against Neza's flames. As the thunderbolts and flames intertwined, thunderbolts exploded, and sparks flew everywhere. Amidst the thunderbolts, an old man wearing a crown and a Taoist robe stood above the 9 heavens. Streaks of thunderbolts seemed to have transformed into a carriage that carried him. Fragrant clouds covered the entire area. It was the Jade Clear lineage's style, yet it was unique. Southern Extremity Senior Apprentice Uncle? Neza was startled upon seeing him. However, he quickly noticed that there were layers of thunderbolts flashing in an orderly manner at a place further away. They were displaying the profundities of the primordial chaos, the transformation of space, the circulation of the 5 elements, the birth of myriad existences, the convergence of yin and yang, and the alternation of day and night. There was another Taoism grand heavenly immortal wearing a crown and a Taoist robe standing there. There are 2 Southern Extremity longevity emperors in this world? That's impossible. Shadow Devil, it's you. Neza immediately reacted and was enraged. No wonder when he came into contact with the thunderbolts, he felt that they contained a warped intent. The Southern Extremity longevity emperor. In front of him was one of the 6 great extinct devils. The Wood Devil, transformed into the Shadow Devil. Unlike Yang Jian's 8-9 Mysteries art, the Shadow Devil's materialization of shadows could perfectly replicate his opponent's appearance. Not only could he perfectly replicate his opponent's strength, however, because of the principles of this secret art, when he fought with others, although his strength was at the same level, his foundation was still that of the demonic Tao. It was fine if he didn't fight, but once he did, others would quickly see through him. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Neza. The Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor smiled and greeted Neza. Then he nodded towards Yin Zhaoge. Taoist Yin, you're here too. Staring at the other party, Yin Zhaoge suddenly frowned. At the same time, Neza also noticed that something was amiss. He noticed that the appearance of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor was rapidly changing. From an old man with a stern face, He turned into a handsome young man with red lips and white teeth. But this wasn't rejuvenation, because that youth looked exactly like Neza himself. She had the same lotus body, and the same heaven and earth ring on her head. She held a fire-tipped spear in her hand, stepped on the wind-fire wheels, and wrapped the armillary sash around her arm. Seeing this, Neza was furious. "Demon, you're courting death." He immediately stabbed with his spear. The young man in front of him chuckled. "Fellow Taoist, you're quite skillful. I have no choice but to block you first." While laughing, he blocked Neza's attack with his gun. The two spears clashed, and their bodies trembled at the same time. As expected, they were evenly matched. Neza was even more enraged. He stepped on the wind-fire wheels, and his speed was inconceivably fast. As if he had transformed into a myriad of clones, he surrounded his opponent and unleashed a barrage of attacks. However, after the Shadow Devil transformed into Neza, his speed didn't seem to be any slower than Neza's. His spear was also faster than the previous one. He countered every single one of Neza's attacks. As the battle reached its climax, the fake Neza raised his hand first. He summoned the Heaven and Earth ring and smashed it towards the real Neza's head. Normally, the Wood Devil's reality manifestation art could only transform into his opponent's body. It couldn't replicate his opponent's treasures. However, Neza's situation was special. Many of his treasures had gone through life and death together with him. They were existences that had descended into the world together with him. To a certain extent, they were just like his fingernails and hair. This allowed him to control these treasures with greater ease. Moreover, these treasures possessed immense might. However, this had become a drawback now. When the Shadow Devil transformed into his appearance, he could also manifest these treasures and control them. Their might wasn't inferior to the real thing at all. Neza looked at the shining Heaven and Earth ring that was smashing towards his head. He was so furious that he wanted to ascend to the heavens. As he gritted his teeth, he summoned his Heaven and Earth ring as well. The two Heaven and Earth rings revolved in mid-air. They clashed against each other and didn't give way to each other. Clanging sounds resounded in the air. Neza first summoned his Heaven and Earth ring, then summoned his golden brick, and attacked his opponent's head. However, the Neza on the other side also summoned his golden brick upon seeing this. The two golden lights clashed in midair. Chapter 17:10. Mahamayuri's appearance caused the hearts of everyone present to sink. To be honest, Kong Xian's appearance wasn't too surprising. The yellow earth apricot flag, the green lotus flag, the white cloud-bound flag, and the floating flame flag were the few defensive treasures that could withstand Mahamayuri's five-colored divine light below the Tao realm. To Mahamayuri, these flags weren't his nemesis, but they were undoubtedly a huge obstacle, especially when he was using himself as the price to obtain the Buddha's relic. These treasures that could obstruct him would naturally affect his status as a super mercenary and affect his ability to obtain the Buddha's relic. The green lotus flag was originally in the Western Pure Lands. Now it was in the Orthodox Taoism. The white cloud-bound flag was in the Nine Nether, and the floating flame flag was in the Tushita Palace. After the yellow earth apricot flag was lost, it was temporarily without an owner. No one could control it and unleash its power. Under such circumstances, Mahamayuri took action and took the yellow earth apricot flag, reducing the number of things that could obstruct him in this world. It wasn't surprising that it was difficult for others to use it. However, even though they had expected it, they couldn't help but feel a headache when they saw Mahamayuri interfere. At this moment, apart from perfected Tai, there was an old man in the nebula closest to the yellow earth apricot flag. This old man looked kind, but he had a bitter expression as he looked at Mahamayuri and shook his head with a sigh. The old man's eyes flickered with a warm radiance that resembled ordinary sunlight. He stood on the spot as if he didn't do anything. However, Mahamayuri's face instantly revealed an irritated expression. "Primordial Heart Devil, congratulations on your recovery. However, don't forget that you can't avoid my five-colored divine light, even if others can't hurt you." The Buddha snorted coldly. The five-colored divine light surrounding his body immediately circulated and swept towards the Primordial Heart Devil. "I'm well aware of Taoist Kong's abilities. I've never dared to treat you lightly. The primordial heart devil's position changed continuously to avoid Mahamayuri's five-colored divine light. I'm helping the Western Pure Lands retrieve the yellow earth apricot flag. Taoist Kong is also in the Western Pure Lands. Why don't you do me a favor? Mahamayuri replied plainly. I respect Amitba, but I don't worship Dipankara. He is him, and I am me. Why bother? The primordial heart devil said, as he took out a small flag. He waved the flag, and suddenly, dense smoke filled the area. Bursts of exotic fragrance enveloped the surroundings, blocking Mahamayuri's advance. White cloud-bound flag. Mahamayuri was once again blocked by the white cloud boundary flag, but he was not annoyed. Chapter 17:11. Various forces started fighting against the Wuxia apricot yellow flag. Although the situation was chaotic, Mahamayuri was still the most popular one. Most of the time, the others still worked together to fight against him. However, the five-colored divine light was too domineering. It was almost invincible. Even a top-notch expert like Taoist Luya tried his best to avoid facing it head-on. If not for the white cloud-bound flag, it would be hard to stop Mahamayuri's advancement. Yen Zhaoge watched from the side for a while. Then, he turned to look at the battle between the real and fake Neza and smiled. We still have to depend on you, Wood Devil. The fake Neza smiled. Young Heavenly Lord, you must be joking. Although I can transform into Taoist Kong Xian's appearance, the five-colored divine light is unique. Without it, what can I do even if I transform? Even now, I can't completely transform into the three C's meeting divine treasure celestial body's various prowess. The real Neza snorted. Other than his astonishing defensive capabilities, his treasured lotus celestial body didn't fear any evil arts. This was his greatest advantage. When the Wood Devil transformed into his appearance, he could replicate other aspects. However, he couldn't replicate the treasured lotus celestial body's various prowess. However, it was sufficient to fight against him. After all, Neza wasn't proficient in evil arts. On the other hand, while the treasured lotus celestial body could defend against all sorts of evil arts, it couldn't defend against the Shadow Devil's technique. It was basically useless against the Shadow Devil. Neza felt the Shadow Devil's words were extremely irritating to him. He was already enraged, and his attacks became even more ferocious. However, other than the treasured lotus celestial body, the Shadow Devil didn't lack any other abilities. He dealt with Neza's attacks according to the situation, and neutralized Neza's waves of attacks. Speaking of which, young Heavenly Lord, you're the one that everyone expects to win. While blocking the real Neza's attacks, the fake Neza smiled towards Yen Zhaoge. Among everyone here, isn't there only you who can fight against Taoist Kong Xian? He was naturally referring to Yen Zhaoge, and the other's reappearance of the great sage equaling heavens. The shadow demon's words were half true and half false. Although he was speaking from the bottom of his heart, he was also trying to sound him out. We'll hold off Mahamayuri, exhausting him to death, then let you take the Wuxia apricot yellow flag. Yen Zhaoge chortled. Isn't your plan a little too ingenious? Shadow Demon said. Now that so many heroes have gathered, it may not be our generation that will succeed. But if young Heavenly Lord still holds back, I'm afraid that fellow Taoist Kong Xian will eventually succeed. That's fine too. Anyway, we have the green lotus flag, and you have the white cloud boundary flag. Although he managed to block Mahamayuri, he had expended too much of his strength. Even after 300 years, he still hasn't recovered. Yen Zhaoge is merely bluffing. Or is he trying to deceive us into giving it our all, so that he can reap the benefits and deal the final blow? Despite having such thoughts, no one intended to verify their guesses with their own bodies. It would be for the best if the great sage equaling heavens' true body didn't appear. Even Mahamayuri didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. Moreover, other than the great sage equaling heavens' true body, everyone else was also wary of Feng Yunqing's presence. With Feng Yunqing's current cultivation realm, even Kong Xian had to be careful when he launched a sneak attack. Otherwise, if he wasn't careful, he might be defeated. Yen Zhaoge's expression was calm, and he remained calm. Since Mahamayuri had arrived, there was no need for him to continue playing the empty fort strategy. Instead, he would be helping Kang Xian share the burden. It would be more appropriate for everyone to focus their attention on Mahamayuri. Mahamayuri had been in the Western Pure Lands for so many years, and he had always been unique. Yin Zhaoge didn't believe that the Dipankara ancient Buddha wouldn't be prepared at all. He didn't possess all of the Buddha's sariras. How could he not be wary of today's situation? Previously, during the fight for the Buddha's sariras, the Western Pure Lands still had the green lotus flag, so they could ignore it. However, this time, they didn't have the green lotus flag anymore. How could they not be wary of Mahamayuri's sudden participation in the battle? Furthermore, they had come to fight for the Wuxia apricot yellow flag for the long term. Their new method would only be able to deal with it temporarily, which was why they placed such importance on the Wuxia apricot yellow flag. However, even if it could only deal with it temporarily, it should still be able to play its role now. Facing Mahamayuri, Buddhism, or rather, the alliance of Buddhism and the 9 underworlds this time, wouldn't be able to keep their composure. This wasn't a problem of ability. Taoism already had the green lotus flag and the floating flame flag as their foundation. They wouldn't be flustered even if they had sufficient resources. Therefore, Yin Zhaoge was able to sit there calmly. He wasn't afraid that his opponent wouldn't make the first move. He looked carefully and saw that the clouds seemed to distort time and space, leading to the pure land of Buddhism. In the hazy light mist, the figure of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was sitting peacefully in the pure land of Buddhism. However, it wasn't that Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wanted to descend here. Instead, he was currently in the Western Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss, and had laid down a huge formation to communicate with the Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva and the others. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Suddenly, a streak of flowing light emerged from his side. It flew out from the Western Pure Lands and traversed the void through the power of the grand formation. It descended and pressed down on Mahamayuri's head. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a Buddhist pestle. Is this thing really in Dipankara's hands? Mahamayuri's expression was a little strange. He was more emotional than surprised and angry. The 5-colored divine radiance went up to block the pestle that descended from the sky. However, the 5-colored divine radiance, which had always been successful in every endeavor, couldn't knock down the pestle at this moment. On the contrary, countless talisman seals appeared on the pestle. As the radiance flowed, they fell continuously, causing Mahamayuri to feel a little overwhelmed. Old Peacock wasn't angry. He said indifferently, "Dipankara is indeed skilled. If he really found this treasure, it seems like I won't be able to obtain the Earth's self-apricot yellow flag today." The 5-colored divine radiance rolled and protected the surroundings, preventing others from getting close and taking advantage of the situation. The pestle rose and fell in midair, pressing down on Mahamayuri and temporarily immobilizing him. However, it didn't cause any damage to him. As time passed, the talisman seals on the pestle began to fade away. If this continued, it wouldn't take long for Mahamayuri to regain his mobility. As expected, he's prepared. Yin Zhaoge looked at the pestle and understood. According to the rumors, when Taoist Juanti subdued Kang Xian during the ancient era, he used a pestle to strike Kang Xian back to his peacock form. From the looks of it, it's this one? After that, Taoist Juanti transformed into the Tathagata Buddha and transcended during the end of the Middle Era. This pestle was left behind in this world, just like Taoism's Triratna Jade Scepter and Green Duckweed Sword. When Dipankara Buddha and the others obtained this treasure, they couldn't control it to do anything. However, this treasure was fated with Mahamayuri in the past. Under the situation where the Western Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss had lost the green lotus flag, it was used by the ancient Dipankara Buddha as a trump card against the old peacock. Now it was working. Only, as Yin Zhaoge expected, this method wasn't as effective as the green lotus flag and the Earth self-apricot yellow flag. After blocking Mahamayuri for a while, it would fall into Mahamayuri's hands. Of course, Kang Xian couldn't control this treasure. However, once it fell into his hands, there would be one less existence that could hinder him. To Dipankara Buddha, this treasure might be precious. However, Its greatest value was that it could suppress Mahamayuri once. With this pestle temporarily suppressing Mahamayuri, the situation changed drastically. Taoist Luya, the Tai cultivated deity, the southern extremity longevity emperor, and the others rushed towards the Earth's self-apricot yellow flag. The 9 underworlds and the Western Pure Land's actions were even faster. The primordial heart devil kept the white cloud-bound flag and waved it towards Taoist Luya and the others. Waves of fragrance obstructed everyone. Yin Zhaoge suddenly moved. He first used the chaotic origin hammer to attack the 9-headed bug, helping the incongruence Divine Mother out of her predicament. The incongruence Divine Mother didn't say anything else. She slashed her sword towards the fragrance released by the white cloud-bound flag. The sword light wasn't particularly sharp. Instead, it flowed like flowing water. In the end, a path was opened up within the fragrance. The incongruence Divine Mother was acquainted with the original owner of the white cloud-bound flag, the Western Queen Mother of the Jade Pool. She could dispel the white cloud-bound flag's defense. Previously, when Taoism and the 9 underworlds were fighting, the 9 underworlds didn't reveal the white cloud-bound flag. As expected, the white cloud-bound flag that could even obstruct Taoist Luya's footsteps couldn't obstruct the incongruence Divine Mother. With the incongruence Divine Mother leading the way, Yin Zhaoge and the others quickly rushed towards the Earth self-apricot yellow flag. The primordial heart devil and the great strength bodhisattva had already expected this. While they split up to obstruct the incongruence Divine Mother, they also rushed towards the Earth self-apricot yellow flag. With Mahamayuri and the demon race losing the initiative, the situation seemed to have reverted back to Taoism and the 9 underworlds battle. Only this time, the great strength bodhisattva and the other Buddhism bigwigs joined the fray. As Yin Zhaoge rushed towards the Earth self-apricot yellow flag, he also waved his hand, revealing a green flag. In an instant, white chi hovered in the air, with countless golden radiances. It was the green lotus flag. In the past, it was the 9 underworlds' great devils that aided the demon race against the Western Pure Lands. They used the seawater to taint the green lotus treasured flag, which allowed the demon race to successfully obtain the Buddha's Saraira. At the same time, Yin Zhaoge and the others from Taoism took the chance to obtain the treasured flag. Now that so many years had passed, the green lotus flag had regained its former brilliance after being cleansed. On the other hand, the 9 underworlds and the Western Pure Lands, who were enemies in the past, had become allies. Moreover, they were using the same trick to deal with the green lotus flag. The Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva and the other Buddhist venerables couldn't help but feel a little strange when they saw the dirty water splashing onto the green lotus flag. However, none of them were slow in their actions. They followed closely behind, wanting to take advantage of the moment when the green lotus flag was unable to function after being stained to take back the flag. If they could take back the green lotus flag, the black young apricot flag wasn't that necessary anymore. Yin Zhaoge looked at the ink-like seawater of the abyss splashing towards him, and the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. He held the green lotus flag in one hand and flipped his other palm outwards. Numerous seals appeared on his palm. They were complex and profound, and vaguely contained traces of evilness and ferociousness within them. When the primordial heart devil saw the appearance of the talisman, his heart jolted. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like the talisman that Yin Zhaoge had written when he used the 9 underworlds' devilish seawater to help Feng Yinxing fight against Nie Jingxian and the Shadow Devil. After that battle, the primordial heart devil and the other 9 underworlds' great devils studied Yin Zhaoge's methods. If the same thing happened again, the 9 underworlds was confident in dealing with it. However, when the primordial heart devil took a closer look at the talisman on Yin Zhaoge's palm, he realized that many changes had occurred. He's also constantly improving, and his speed is extremely fast. The primordial heart devil's gaze flickered. Then, as expected, black radiances flickered from the talisman on Yin Zhaoge's palm. Next, the 9 underworlds' devilish seawater gushed out and rapidly formed seals in midair, which then transformed into a talisman array. The flowing lights surrounded the 9 underworlds' devilish seawater and transformed it into a talisman array, which blocked the primordial heart devil's seawater. In an instant, as if a shapeless dam had been constructed, it blocked the surging black water. The black water couldn't touch the green lotus flag, which continued manifesting its abilities. Rays of white chi and golden radiances manifested, which blocked the 9 underworlds and the Buddhist's path. He turned his head and saw devilish chi forming within the chaotic space. Then, a youth with red lips and white teeth appeared. Although he looked like Neza, his gaze was filled with malice, and devilish chi was overflowing. Shadow Devil? Yin Zhaoge looked at him with interest. Although the Shadow Devil still had Neza's appearance, the universe ring on his neck, the wind-fire wheels beneath his feet, the mixed heavenly silk on his arm, and the fire-tipped spear in his hand had already disappeared. Not only that, but his body was also becoming more and more blurry, as if he was losing his human form, turning into a blurry shadow. In the end, there was only a shadow in front of Yin Zhaoge. Without his actual body, he existed within the void. I wanted to look for Taoist Tai, but I couldn't find him. Never did I expect to meet the young heavenly lord. As the shadow swayed, a voice resounded from within. Yin Zhaoge smiled and said, "If you really can't do it, just give the white cloud-bound flag to the Western Pure Lands. The Western Pure Lands would be more than happy to exchange for it with what you want." "Young heavenly lord, you must be joking," the Shadow Devil said. "You used the Amitabha Buddha's possession to obstruct the Western Pure Lands Taoists. Even if the Amitabha Buddha isn't able to leave for now, he would definitely retrieve the green lotus flag afterward. Do you intend to fight against the Buddhists to the death just because of this? Speaking of which, I'm also troubled. If the Buddhists retrieve the green lotus flag, how are we going to trade with them?" The Shadow Devil's tone was calm, as if he was chatting with Yin Zhaoge as an old friend. "Stop it," Yin Zhaoge snorted. "The Amitabha Buddha didn't make a move at that time, and he most likely wouldn't make a move after that. If it's the vast freedom heavenly devil, I would have to be more careful." The Shadow Devil's tone didn't change. "That's naturally for the best. If that's the case, even if we can't find the 5-self apricot yellow flag, we would still be able to help the Western Pure Lands retrieve the green lotus flag from you, young heavenly lord." As he spoke, the shadow's appearance started changing. The originally dim shadow also gradually gained color. In the blink of an eye, a young man appeared in front of Yin Zhaoge. The young man was dressed exactly the same as him, and had the same appearance. Chapter 17:16. With Yin Zhaoge's performance during the fight for the Wuxia apricot yellow flag, the Shadow Devil wasn't worried that the great sage equaling heavens would appear. The Shadow Devil felt that he had already placed himself very low, already placing Yin Zhaoge as highly as he could. He had already made up his mind to transform into Yin Zhaoge's appearance using illusory manifestation, then fight a battle of attrition with Yin Zhaoge with a strength that was close to similar. What was being exhausted was not endurance, but who was more durable. While replicating Yin Zhaoge of the grand virtual level would cause many of his attributes to be lowered to the grand virtual level, he still had the foundation of the grand heavenly undying embodiment body. If he were to trade blows for blows, no grand virtual immortal would be able to fight him to the end. Yin Zhaoge's strength was astonishing, and his defenses were so strong that even many grand heavenly realm experts couldn't hurt him. But what about his own attacks? The Shadow Devil was thinking of using his spear to attack his shield, making use of this to frustrate Yin Zhaoge. He did not even have any hopes of killing Yin Zhaoge by himself, as he only hoped to end the battle within the shortest amount of time possible, wresting away the green lotus flag in Yin Zhaoge's possession that had been contaminated by the seawater of the deep abyss of the 9 underworlds. If he could gain more, it would be a pleasant surprise. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if he didn't succeed, Shadow Fiend would still be able to escape unscathed. No matter how shocking Yin Zhaoge's strength was, and how he could defeat a veteran devil lord like him, one of the first few ancient devils in the world, could he defeat another him so easily? However, after exchanging blows, Shadow Fiend realized that he was ridiculously wrong. At this moment, seeing Yin Zhaoge's figure, seeing that scene of the primordial earlier Heaven 3 scriptures, and the later Heaven 6 scriptures vaguely combining as one, the shadow devil's body, that resembled a dim shadow, involuntarily shook slightly. His gaze was fixated on the top of Yin Zhaoge's head. In that place, there seemed to be an indescribable auspicious cloud existing, hazy and chaotic. It was similar to Yin Di's grand simplicity splendor cloud, yet different as well. This primal chaos auspicious cloud was faintly discernible. One moment, it became concrete, the next moment, it became blurry, and the next moment it disappeared. The shadow demon didn't really care when the outline of the magic cloud was clear and concrete, or when it disappeared completely. However, when this auspicious cloud was hazy and blurry, seemingly illusory yet real, seemingly boundless, yet also seemingly collapsing into an indescribable point, Shadow Devil's gaze immediately became sharp. It's not complete yet. It's only in its embryonic form. It floated beside the primordial heart devil, as if it had always been standing there. The shadow twisted. Its aura was even weaker than before, and its entire body was dimmer. As expected of the young heavenly lord, the shadow devil coughed continuously. Yin Zhaoge kept the primordial chaos hammer and said, "Other than becoming real like a shadow, you still possess other abilities. In this battle, my wish was fulfilled, and I managed to see what I wanted to see." The shadow devil couldn't help but smile bitterly. Lord Luya and the others stared at Yin Zhaoge, and their gazes wavered slightly. However, before they could say anything, Yin Zhaoge's gaze scanned through the entire battlefield and stopped at the demon race's camp. "Nine-headed bug, let's make it clear. Just stand there and watch how I'm going to kill you." Yin Zhaoge stared at the nine-headed bug and smiled. "I was busy with the Wuxia apricot yellow flag just now. Now that I'm here, don't run away." The nine-headed bug was so furious that he laughed instead. "Hey youngster, you sure are arrogant." Although he had just witnessed Yin Zhaoge's battle with the shadow devil, the nine-headed bug wasn't afraid. After all, the shadow devil's situation was too unique. "Nine-headed great sage, please allow me to settle my karma with this benefactor Yin first." Suddenly, another voice resounded. A white lotus appeared in the demon race's camp. The white lotus bloomed, and a young man dressed in monk robes sat atop it. His smooth black hair draped behind his back. Everyone recognized him as the sword master of the six paths, Chu Su. The nine-headed bug looked at Chu Su. "You're talking about your master, the treasured sword Buddha? My Buddhism cultivation isn't sufficient. I've embarrassed myself." Chu Su said calmly. "My master perished because of this benefactor Yin. As his disciple, I have to settle this karma for him. Otherwise, I'll fall into hell." As for the Maitreya Buddha, the nine-headed bug frowned. Chu Su put his palms together. "The Buddha is merciful, knowing that I'm here." "Up to you." The nine-headed bug nodded and said. Chu Su turned around and looked at Yin Zhaoge. "Benefactor Yin hasn't passed the origin heavenly tribulation yet. Logically speaking, I shouldn't be so thick-skinned as to invite you for a battle. However, forgive me for not being able to wait any longer. Today I'd like to challenge Benefactor Yin to a battle." Chapter 17-18. Although they already knew Chu Su's intentions, there was still a slight commotion when they heard him issue a challenge. No matter where he came from, the sword son of the six paths, Chu Su, was a grand heavenly realm expert who had attained Buddhahood and cultivated his own pure land of Buddhism. At the fourth tier of the immortal realm, a grand heavenly immortal was close to the Tao. It could be said to be the most unique. The all-heaven immortal physique possessed an eternal and unrestrained body. Stepping through the origin heavenly tribulation to ascend into the golden immortal realm carried extraordinary meaning. Although Chu Su came from the heretical path, he was widely recognized as a genius. His strength was almost on par with the Buddhas of the Western Pure Land, who had attained the righteous path of Buddhism through their looks. As a sword cultivator, he was even more adept at fighting and killing, which made others look at him in a new light. As for Yin Zhaoge, he had yet to transcend the origin heavenly tribulation, and was still a grand virtual immortal. Now the grand heavenly realm Chu Su was challenging the grand virtual realm Yin Zhaoge. Of course, with the help of the grand heavenly immortal artifact, Yin Zhaoge had slain the Red Inferno Dhamma Buddha Lord. defeated the Dingguang Joyous Buddha, and even defeated the Shadow Devil. All of these proved that he wasn't an ordinary grand virtual immortal. Even a grand heavenly immortal wouldn't be able to defeat him easily. However, that could still be considered as meeting on a narrow path, and they had no choice but to fight. Currently, Chu Su was taking this matter seriously. As a grand heavenly realm, he was officially challenging the grand virtual realm Yin Zhaoge. Moreover, he was acting very humble. Regardless of who won or lost this battle, even regardless of whether Yin Zhaoge accepted the challenge, Chu Su had already thrown away his face this time. It was just that looking at Yin Zhaoge, everyone here vaguely felt that the scene before them did not seem all that shocking after all. The primordial heart devil looked at Dao Lord Luya. This should be the second time in history, right? Since Yang Jian, who was still a grand virtual immortal in ancient times. It seems like no one has appeared before today. Dao Lord Luya nodded and didn't reply. He only looked at Yin Zhaoge and Chu Su with a probing gaze. If we don't fight today, will your sword become duller and duller? Yin Zhaoge did not use the difference in their cultivation basis as a reason to refuse the battle. He just first appraised Chu Su, a rather interested expression appearing on his face. Now is the moment when my blade is sharpest, Chu Su answered calmly. Yin Zhaoge smiled playfully. I admire your frankness, but not only are we not friends, we instead have enmity being enemies. Why must I clash with you when you are at your strongest? Since you will become weaker and weaker, then the weaker you are, the easier it will be for me to defeat you. The longer this goes on, the more advantageous it will be for me. Why don't I wait a little longer? Regardless of whether Yin Zhaoge had defeated the Red Inferno Dhamma Buddha Lord, the Shadow Devil, and the Dingguang Joyous Buddha, who were also in the grand heavenly realm like Chu Su, Yin Zhaoge was still a grand virtual immortal. It was only natural for him not to accept a grand heavenly immortal's challenge. I will praise my enemies, but I have no interest in aiding them. Looking at Chu Su, Yin Zhaoge spread his hands apart. Chu Su said calmly, Benefactor Yin naturally does not have a reason to help me. I have no other requests other than to personally end my master's karma, regardless of success or failure. He raised his head and stared at Yin Zhaoge. I've attained the Buddhist kingdom, while Benefactor Yin is still a virtual immortal. No matter how special you are in the grand virtual realm, this is still unfair to you. As he spoke, he stood up from the White Lotus. The long sword that was originally placed horizontally on his knees was thrown onto the lotus platform. Then he leaped down from the lotus platform. Benefactor Yin, how many grand heavenly immortal artifacts do you have? You can use all of them. I'll challenge you with my bare hands. Chu Su said, regardless of the location. Neza had an arrogant personality. Previously, when he heard Chu Su challenging Yin Zhaoge, although he was confident in Yin Zhaoge, he couldn't help but mock Chu Su. However, after hearing Chu Su's words, his gaze turned slightly more solemn. A top-notch grand virtual immortal with grand heavenly immortal strength might be able to contend against a bare-handed grand heavenly immortal with a grand heavenly immortal's grand heavenly immortal. Not to mention, Yin Zhaoge was an anomaly amongst anomalies. Moreover, Chu Su's strength still couldn't compare to a top-notch expert like Neza. No matter how much of a genius he was, the heretic's innate limitations still existed. Moreover, Chu Su wasn't just giving Yin Zhaoge the advantage of his weapon. He was even giving up his geographical advantage. With such an attitude, if he wasn't confident in his abilities, then he was prepared to die. For Chu Su, this wasn't a path that he had to take. Even if his sword became blunt and his cultivation decreased, he would still be a grand heavenly immortal heretic. Even if he couldn't take revenge personally, he might still have the chance to witness his enemy's death. However, he still came. Other than himself, he had given up on all external forces and only wished for a battle. Everyone looked at Chu Su and remained silent. Yin Zhaoge looked at Chu Su again. After a while, he suddenly smiled. I accept your challenge. There's no need for you to restrain yourself. You're a sword cultivator, and your sword is related to your life. Since this battle requires you to go all out and not leave any regrets, you should bring your sword along. Yin Zhaoge said plainly. As for whether I use my weapon or not, that's my business. There's no need for me to choose the location. Let's just do it here. With so many fellow Taoists here, they can bear witness to our battle. Yin Zhaoge looked at Chu Su. However, I can only fulfill your wish until here. Take revenge for the sword Buddha? You won't stand a chance. As Yin Zhaoge spoke, he was already walking towards Chu Su, a grand virtual immortal facing a grand heavenly immortal. As Yin Zhaoge walked forward, his figure grew taller and taller, as if he was a heavenly god descending upon the mortal realm, overlooking the world. Benefactor Yin, please. Chu Su didn't turn around to retrieve the long sword he threw down from the White Lotus. Instead, he walked forward towards Yin Zhaoge. As the two approached each other, it didn't seem like they were traversing thousands of miles in an instant. Instead, it seemed like two people who had just started cultivating martial arts were walking on flat ground, facing each other. However, the void between the two clearly showed signs of intertwining and distortions. Although Chu Su didn't have a sword in his hand, his sword chi surged, and a six-colored sword light appeared. As the sword light rotated, space seemed to distort. Objects that were originally tangible became illusory. As the sword light rotated, they were about to be sucked into the sword light. As Yin Zhaoge faced the sword light, his mind went blank for a moment. An illusory world seemed to appear in front of his eyes. The 6 paths of reincarnation appeared, and Yin Zhaoge felt like he was about to be sucked into one of them. Chu Su pulled himself out of the 6 paths of reincarnation, slaying devils and plucking karma, in an attempt to trap Yin Zhaoge within the cycle of reincarnation. The more karma his opponent had accumulated, the stronger Chu Su's sword force would be. Chu Su often had a shocking record of defeating the strong despite being the weak. If Yin Zhaoge's response was slightly inappropriate, his soul would immediately be sent into the 6 paths of reincarnation, and he would instantly be defeated. Chapter 17:19. Unlike the treasured sword Lord Buddha Lord's sword will that evolved the 6 paths of reincarnation, the sword of Chu Su focused on stirring up the karma between the opponent and the creation and reincarnation of the heaven and earth. Through this, the opponent would be trapped in the 6 paths of reincarnation, turning the entire world into the opponent's enemy. If this attack succeeded, Chu Su himself would be uninvolved, while Yin Zhaoge's enemy would become the reincarnation principles of this world's creation, as if he was the enemy of the entire world. Tao Lord Luya, the primordial heart demon, and the others watched the battle attentively. While the shadow devil had just been defeated by Yin Zhaoge, this battle still held great suspense. The more karma involved, the heavier the negative karma. The weight of one's negative karma originated from one's experiences and was not necessarily related to one's strength. However, besides an extremely small number of experts who were able to ascend to the Golden Immortal Realm and Grand Void Realm, which one of them hadn't overcome all obstacles to arrive at their current position, it was a fact that the stronger one was, the heavier the negative karma would be. However, the greater the opponent's negative karma, the stronger Chu Su's sword momentum would be. Therefore, those who understood Chu Su's swordsmanship often said that he became stronger when he met strong opponents. Ever since Chu Su had made a name for himself, he had many battle records of defeating stronger opponents despite being weaker than him. This was a solid foundation for his current reputation. Of course, the heavier the karma, the easier it was to be dragged into the 6 paths of reincarnation. But it didn't mean that one would be doomed eternally. Anyone below the Tao realm would feel pressured when going against the laws and principles of the entire world of creation. However, if one could avoid or break free from the shackles of reincarnation before that happened, the situation would be very different. Facing this sword of Chu Su's, Yin Zhaoge let out a long breath, a profound, indiscernible glow lighting up above his head. As the essence of God gathered above his head, he felt as if he had been enlightened. The chaotic changes caused by Chu Su's sword will, and the bizarre scenes still existed, but it had become much more stable. As far as the eye could see, there was the disturbance of the mortal world, the howling of a myriad of malicious spirits, the boundless sea of blood, and so on and so forth. As Yin Zhaoge lowered his head, he saw streaks of black qi emanating from his body. They resembled countless threads, entangling with each other, and falling into the 6 paths of samsara. The black threads were trying to drag him into the cycle of reincarnation. All of this seemed illusory yet real. And it wasn't something that could be broken just by struggling. When it came to karmic entanglements, the more one struggled, the deeper and tighter the entanglement would become, and the faster one would fall into samsara. If he was really dragged into it, the enemy that Yin Zhaoge would have to face would no longer be Chu Su. Instead, it would be the endless cycle of reincarnation that had circulated throughout this entire world. Back in the Jade Spring world, during the fight for the immortal trapping sword and slaying the sword Buddha, Yin Zhaoge and the others had fought against Chu Su. With the immortal slaughtering sword in hand, Gao Qingxian managed to barely evade Chu Su's attack. Even with the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand, the golden body of the great sage might seem like he was using brute force to overcome technique. But in truth, he was just too clumsy. Other than his immense strength, every single move he made was filled with profound profundities. Otherwise, if he were to rely solely on brute force, he would have to be careful that he would not be able to overcome it. At this moment, looking at the streams of black qi attempting to drag him into the cycle of reincarnation, Yin Zhaoge did not struggle in the opposite direction. Instead, he took the initiative to stride towards the chaotic scenes of the six paths. Chu Su's heart sunk slightly. Looking over, she saw a faint jade green light flickering within Yin Zhaoge's pupils, which then enveloped his entire body. Between the specks of light, jade green threads were interconnected. They resembled a light fog, which revolved around Yin Zhaoge's body. At the same time, Yin Zhaoge raised his hand and punched towards the six paths of reincarnation. His fist seemed to envelop the surrounding space, filling up the entire universe, filling up time, and occupying the past and future. It was ethereal, yet omnipresent. However, as Yin Zhaoge raised his hand and punched, streaks of white sword qi surged forth. While those streaks of sword qi seemed gentle, they contained the horrifying image of all things withering and being annihilated. Regardless of whether it was real or fake, the foundation of existence within the world was completely annihilated, heading towards its end. The three concepts fused perfectly at this moment, giving rise to a brand new transformation. Yin Zhaoge's entire body was enveloped by the jade-green fog, as if he was hiding within a jade-green nebula. The nebula shone with starlight, causing it to appear blurry. The nebula gradually turned from jade-green to pure white. As Yin Zhaoge strode forward, the pure white cloud of fog moved forward as well. Wherever it passed by, the scenes of the six paths of reincarnation started disappearing soundlessly. There was no world-shaking commotion, nor was there any intense collision. Only when the white nebula came into contact with Chu Su's sword intent, a soft rustling sound could be heard. That was the result of thousands of collisions between the two. Chu Su guided the myriad phenomena of reincarnation and the various sceneries of the six paths of reincarnation. Yin Zhaoge used an even more ingenious method to split them into billions of tiny nodes, which were then destroyed one by one. Jade Clear Primordial Heavenly Scripture, Grand Clear Tai Fist, Prime Clear Immortal Ending Sword Manual. The Shadow Devil looked at this scene and said softly, before ascending to the Grand Heavenly Realm, he had already created more than one brand new Taoism supreme martial art. Coincidentally, it's able to counter Chu Su's reincarnation sword manual, said the primordial heart devil slowly. As Yin Zhaoge's figure was enveloped by the pure white nebula, the streaks of black qi that guided him into reincarnation started breaking apart, and were isolated by the white qi starlight. Upon seeing this, Chu Su's gaze remained emotionless, as if he had perished. Within the void, his soft sigh resounded. In the next moment, the silky black hair on his head started falling off. Everyone's eyes suddenly froze. Chu Su stood quietly on the spot. His long hair fell off. Along with the monk robe that he had always been wearing, his appearance was no different from other monks. Behind his head, a cluster of perfect Buddha light even shone. His sword qi had also reached an unprecedented peak. His extreme obsession towards hatred and his perfect comprehension towards Buddhism had both reached the peak at the same time. While they contradicted each other, they existed at the same time, perfectly fusing together. As if a double-edged sword. As Chu Su placed his palms together, his sword intent suddenly surged. while water could extinguish fire. If the water was too weak and the fire was too strong, the fire would extinguish the water as well. As Chu Su's sword intent guided, the door of the 6 paths of reincarnation within the void reopened, revealing a myriad of phenomena. At the same time, a large amount of black qi swept towards Yin Zhaoge like a tornado. While Yin Zhaoge's body was surrounded by white qi starlight, the black qi formed by the karmic powers couldn't be dispelled. It swept Yin Zhaoge's entire body like a tidal wave. Under the guidance of the black qi, the horrifying 6 paths of reincarnation were like a colossal beast with its mouth wide open, wanting to swallow Yin Zhaoge whole. The scene in front of Yin Zhaoge changed again. Many unfamiliar yet familiar faces appeared. Some of them had already been buried in the river of time. However, now they appeared in front of Yin Zhaoge again, causing him to recall the past. Chapter 1720. Watching the battle between the two sides, everyone present was completely focused. Seeing that Chu Su's worries were gone, and the Buddha's light appeared on the back of his head, as if he had achieved enlightenment, but his sword intent and obsession had also risen to the peak. The expressions of the people watching the battle became more serious. He has some skill, the 9-headed bug muttered to himself. The central blessed lands of Saha could produce such a character. What an anomaly. Dalord Luya beside him nodded slightly. That's right. In their eyes, the new generation of Sword Buddha, Chu Su, was even stronger than some of the Buddhas of the Western Pure Land, who had attained enlightenment on the righteous path in terms of combat prowess. Even the Red Inferno Dhamma King, the Narayan Buddha, and the Virtuous Splendor Buddha were inferior to the number 1 Buddha under the blessed lands of the White Lotus Maitreya. On the other side, the primordial heart devil sighed and said to the shadow devil, including before the great calamity, ever since the blessed lands of the White Lotus appeared, it has been several tens of thousands of years. This should be the strongest heretic grand heavenly immortal. He should also be at the pinnacle of a heretic grand heavenly immortal. In terms of combat prowess, there shouldn't be anyone stronger than him, said the shadow devil softly. The Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva and the other Buddhist Bantis remained silent as they watched the battle. Neza suddenly said, "What a pity." The incongruence Divine Mother appeared beside him and sighed after a while. Indeed, what a pity. Feng Yinxing remained silent. Compared to Chu Su, she was more concerned about Yin Zhaoge. In a trance, many faces flashed past Yin Zhaoge's eyes like a lantern. There was the furious Yi Jing, whose entire body was covered in flame patterns. There was the arrogant Zhao Hao, who looked down on others. There was also Lin Zhou, who berated Yin Zhaoge for changing the history that he was familiar with. There was the Broad Creed Mountains decimating Abyss Lord, who was also the sect's longtime elder, Xian Dongping, who single-handedly guided the 9 underworlds crevice to tear open in a rank 8 world. There were the Sacred Sun sect's members who had been fighting against the Broad Creed Mountain for many years. Huang Guanglia, Huang Su, and Huang Jie's 3 generations fought against the Broad Creed Mountain. There was the Sacred Sun Saint Zhang Chao, who fought from a rank 8 world all the way to the world beyond worlds. In the world beyond worlds, there was also the Radiant Light sect, the Grand Xian dynasty and Zhuang Shun, and Zhuang Chaohui of Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope. There was the true immortal Qian Yuanzi, and the upper exalt Chen Qianhua. Later on, because of his mother Xue Chuqing, he went against the descendants of the exalted earth luminary, Jiang Shun. Thinking back to when he had left the world beyond worlds that year, over 400 years had already passed since then. Following that, the figure that appeared before him grew closer and closer. That distant feeling of unfamiliarity also grew fainter and fainter, as the person grew more and more familiar. Yin Zhaoge instead didn't intend to continue watching. It's been so many years. Yin Zhaoge sighed emotionally, and light gathered above his head. Other than the splendor of divinity, the splendor of qi also appeared above Yin Zhaoge's head. The celestial core around him surged like a rising tide, and it began to increase substantially. The nebula of white gas, which was originally wrapped in the black gas of karma, suddenly expanded in all directions in a seemingly endless manner. The low sound produced when the white gas and black gas came into contact with each other became louder and more deafening at this moment. The spectators felt as if a thunderclap rang in their ears. The black gas quickly retreated, and the scene of the 6 paths of reincarnation also disappeared. Only Yin Zhaoge's figure grew taller and taller, and his aura was terrifying. Although it was only the duo flower's converged crown, and he had yet to transcend the origin heavenly tribulation and transform his celestial core into immortal splendor. However, among the grand heavenly realm experts, other than Feng Yunsheng, Daolord Luya Neza, the primordial heart devil, and a few others, everyone else felt pressured when facing Yin Zhaoge. The horrifying aura that seemed capable of crushing the origin heavenly realm shook everyone's understanding of the laws and principles. Yin Zhaoge combined the origin heavenly scripture, Tai Fist, and immortal ending sword, and created an unprecedented profundity with what he had learned. The brilliant nebula and dense white gas swept across the surroundings, breaking through Chu Su's reincarnation sword scripture. Everyone even felt as if the 6 paths of reincarnation had stopped and reversed at this moment. Chu Su let out a groan from the backlash of the reincarnation power. The perfect Buddha light behind his head instantly dimmed. The transparent sword intent withered along with it. Just like how the sword's edge was covered in dust, it couldn't be wiped clean. Specks of flickering light shrouded the nebula and dispersed it. Yin Zhaoge took a step out from within, and instantly arrived in front of Chu Su. "I have a sword as well. Sword Buddha, please have a look." Yin Zhaoge pointed his index and middle fingers at Chu Su. Chu Su was powerless to resist the backlash of reincarnation. The faraway sword lights poured down, and the fallen deity sword slashed down, instantly causing him to fall back to the grand virtual realm. Although it was only for an instant, Yin Zhaoge's other hand had already reached out and covered Chu Su's head. In the next instant, Chu Su could return to the grand heavenly realm. However, he knew that he wouldn't have the chance to do so. Fate. Chu Su sighed. Rest in peace. Yin Zhaoge was similarly calm. He exerted force with his palm, and the radiance within Chu Su's eyes instantly dimmed. The most outstanding grand heavenly realm expert in the history of the heretics instantly perished under Yin Zhaoge's palm after releasing his radiance. Yin Zhaoge could even vaguely feel the universe trembling slightly, as if a Buddha light imbued with faith power was faintly appearing. It should belong to the master of the blessed lands of the White Lotus, the Maitreya Buddha. Only, due to the immortal extermination formation, he didn't make a move. Yin Zhaoge looked around. When the spectators made contact with his gaze, most of them even felt a slight stab of pain. Although Chu Su had passed away, his figure remained unharmed, and his corpse remained intact. A layer of faint golden radiance gradually surfaced on his body's surface, causing his entire body to resemble a golden Buddha statue. The Buddha statue was extremely lifelike, and its surface wasn't damaged in the slightest. Yin Zhaoge tapped with his finger, causing the Buddha statue to fly to the side. There a white lotus floated by itself. After the Buddha statue landed on it, the long sword beside it vibrated slightly within its scabbard. There aren't any others from the blessed lands of the White Lotus here. Yin Zhaoge waved his hand again, and the White Lotus floated towards Taoist Luya. "I'll have to trouble you to send someone to send Taoist Chu's corpse back to the blessed lands of the White Lotus." Taoist Luya accepted it. Before he could reply, Yin Zhaoge's gaze shifted to the other side. "Nine-headed bug, it's time for us to fight." The 2 flowers above Yin Zhaoge's head shone brightly. He stood by the void and stared at the 9-headed bug. Everyone else was in an uproar upon hearing his words. After consecutively battling against the Shadow Devil and Chu Su, 2 grand heavenly realm experts, Yin Zhaoge didn't stop. He immediately challenged another grand heavenly realm expert, the demon race's great sage 9-headed bug. Taoist Neza challenged the ancient Dipankara Buddha. The ancient Buddha had avoided him for hundreds of years. Finally, both of them are in the grand heavenly realm. Yin Zhaoge didn't mention that he had just accepted Chu Su's challenge. Instead, he pointed at himself, and then at the 9-headed bug. "Now a mere grand virtual immortal like me is challenging a demon race great sage like you. You wouldn't be avoiding my battle, right?" Chapter 1721. The nine-headed bug's 9 heads had a ferocious expression on their faces, and a ferocious glint flickered within their 18 eyes. Arrogant brat, why are you trying to provoke me? If you want to play such tricks, let me teach you. Although he had just witnessed Yin Zhaoge's battle against the Shadow Devil and Chu Su, the nine-headed bug was still as ferocious as ever. He glanced at Yin Zhaoge. Since you know that you're challenging a grand heavenly immortal as a grand virtual immortal, if I win and you don't give me anything, why should I bother with you for bullying the weak? Brat, what gives you the right to brag here? Neza sneered. When you were at the grand virtual immortal stage, could you even defeat 2 grand heavenly immortals? If you can't do it, are you even worthy of saying that you're bullying the weak? The nine-headed bug chuckled. Although the Samsara Sword Buddha lost, he's him, and I'm me. He didn't mention the Shadow Devil on the other side as he just looked at Yin Zhaoge, saying, I don't want anything else from you. You placed down the green lotus flag as a wager. I will accept your challenge. Do you dare to bet or not? The 9 underworld's devils and Western Pure Lands Buddha's gazes flickered upon hearing this. Although they didn't step forward, their auras were clearly pressuring Yin Zhaoge. Feng Yunsheng and the other Taoism's grand heavenly immortals immediately faced off against the enemies in front of them. The atmosphere instantly tensed up. After hearing the nine-headed bug's words, Yin Zhaoge laughed. Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Wouldn't our battle be a death match? The green lotus flag was tainted by the 9 underworld seawater, and it can't be used for the time being. I'll carry it with me, and I won't hand it over to anyone else. If you can kill me, it'll naturally belong to you. You can bring along your scrap metal as well. I don't care about it. I'll just borrow your 9 heads. Yin Zhaoge pointed at the 9-headed bug. We'll fight to the death. Do you dare to come? The 9-headed bug stared at Yin Zhaoge and yelled, That's for the best. Die, kid. Before he finished his sentence, he swept along the 9 heavens' astral winds and instantly arrived in front of Yin Zhaoge. This sudden pounce was akin to a sneak attack. Upon seeing this, Neza cursed loudly again. He wished he could block this formation for Yin Zhaoge. Only when Daolord Luya stopped him from afar did he stop. The 9-headed bug ignored Neza's curses. Now that they were truly fighting, his arrogant and haughty aura instantly vanished, leaving behind only a cold and stern killing intent. It would be best if you don't flee later on. Yin Zhaoge's expression did not change, as the jade green light within his eyes outlined numerous runes. Facing the crescent moon spade that was already descending from the 9-headed bug's hands, Yin Zhaoge advanced instead of retreating. He took a step forward, almost avoiding the edge of the crescent moon spade. He rushed into the inner circle and raised his hand to block the long pole of the crescent moon spade. Their bodies shook simultaneously, but that crescent shovel was shockingly forcibly deflected by Yin Zhaoge. With the 9-headed bug's chest wide open, Yin Zhaoge immediately struck out with a palm with his other hand. The 9-headed bug hurriedly raised a hand before his chest as well, blocking Yin Zhaoge's palm. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the two's powers collided. Yin Zhaoge's body shook as the 9-headed bug stumbled a step backwards. Jade Clear Cyclic Heavenly Seal, Grand Clear Crutch, Prime Clear Immortal Exterminating Sword Manual. A thought instantly flashed through the 9-headed bug's mind. Another new supreme martial art created by combining the 3 purities, supplemented by the origin heavenly scripture. Actually, this wasn't the first time he clashed with Yin Zhaoge. Back when Yin Zhaoge had just attained the 5 Qis unification, before the battle for the immortal exterminating formation, they had already clashed briefly. At that time, Yin Zhaoge had to borrow the immortal exterminating sword's sharpness to block the 9-headed bug's attack. Now he was clashing head-on against this 9-headed great sage with his bare fists. Yin Zhaoge gained the upper hand with a single move, and he didn't show any mercy. He continued stepping forward and punched towards the 9-headed bug again. The 9-headed bug wasn't ordinary either. He didn't panic in the face of danger. Gusts of wind swept by his body like a heaven-piercing blade, slashing towards Yin Zhaoge from all directions. Streams of qi rose from Yin Zhaoge's body. The grand beginning bright emptiness form and the grand plainness immeasurable body were unleashed together, forcefully blocking those terrifying gusts of wind. The 9-headed bug frowned. The combination of grand primordial and grand plainness of the grand pure lineage was one of the top defensive techniques of the Taoist sections. However, it could not be executed by just anyone. A grand virtual immortal could withstand the attack of a great sage of the demon race. When he focused his gaze, he discovered that beneath Yin Zhaoge's pristine qi, there was also the foundation of the world formed by the jade clear later heaven 6 scriptures. The 3 flowers converged crown would transcend the origin heavenly tribulation and ascend to the grand heavenly immortal realm. Immortal essence would transform into immortal splendor, allowing one to ascend to the next level. Virtual immortals couldn't harm heavenly immortals, and immortal essence couldn't harm immortal splendor. On the other hand, when immortal splendor targeted immortal essence, it would be more convenient. It wasn't impossible for a virtual immortal to block a heavenly immortal, but they would have to pay a higher price. However, not only was Yin Zhaoge filled with immortal essence, but he was also able to control his own strength more skillfully than the 9-headed bug in the grand heavenly immortal realm. While immortal essence couldn't harm immortal splendor, with Yin Zhaoge standing here, a grand heavenly immortal like the 9-headed bug wouldn't be able to harm a grand virtual immortal like him either. Under the combined efforts of the 2 defensive arts, Yin Zhaoge went against the wind and broke through the astral winds. Then he punched towards the 9-headed bug's chest. He didn't waste the advantage he had just obtained. Instead, he wanted to expand it further. The 9-headed bug was helpless and could only retreat. On the other hand, Yin Zhaoge took a series of steps, advancing step by step as he pressed forward unceasingly. With every step he took and every punch he threw, the 9-headed bug's disadvantage would increase. Fortunately, this demon race great sage had experienced many battles, and his martial arts were astonishing. Even so, he was still being beaten by Yin Zhaoge to the point where he was slowly losing ground. Everyone watching the battle had a solemn expression on their faces. After 2 consecutive battles, he still has so much strength left. The Mahasthamaprapta Bodhisattva put his palms together. Fighting against the Shadow Devil was fine. After the Shadow Devil miscalculated, he wouldn't be able to make a comeback. However, in his battle against Chu Su, even though the outcome of the battle was decided in just a few moves, the dangers within were far beyond anyone's imagination. Due to the uniqueness of Chu Su's Samsara sword scripture, the outcome of the battle was decided by a thin line. Yin Zhaoge couldn't break through Chu Su's sword and was instantly dragged into the reincarnation cycle. Breaking through the reincarnation sword and subduing one's karma was extremely profound. Although it was only for a short period of time, it consumed a lot of energy. If the 9-headed bug didn't know about this, he wouldn't have accepted the battle so easily after witnessing Yin Zhaoge consecutively defeating the Shadow Devil and Chu Su. This was also the reason why he launched a sneak attack. This demon race great sage no longer dared to underestimate this grand virtual realm opponent. Only, Yin Zhaoge was much stronger than what he and the others had expected. It was different from the profound battle against Chu Su and the Shadow Devil. At this moment, Yin Zhaoge had switched to a head-on clash with the 9-headed bug, a demon race great saint. It was a different style, going all out with unparalleled ferocity. Although their fighting styles were different, they seemed to be pointing towards the same outcome. Chapter 1722. Yin Zhaoge had yet to transcend the origin heavenly tribulation, and his immortal essence could hardly harm a grand heavenly immortal. However, the 9-headed bug did not dare to take the attack head-on. It still tried its best to defend itself and turn the tide. He had not forgotten that Yin Zhaoge possessed grand firmament immortal artifacts like the Heaven Ascension Drum and the Chaotic Origin Hammer. If Yin Zhaoge managed to break through its stance, completely ripping apart its defenses, the 9-headed bug would immediately follow in the footsteps of the Shadow Devil. If it was unable to withstand the Chaotic Essence Hammer that came smashing down at that time, he intended to shift space to evade and pull apart the distance between him and Yin Zhaoge, so that he could regroup. A figure flashed in the void, and it was as if there were many shadows of the 9-headed bug in an instant. Still, Yin Zhaoge's grand heavenly immortal artifact, the heavenly ascending drum, appeared above his head. The surging drum sounds were faintly discernible. Seeing this, the nine-headed bug knew that its plan would not work. As long as the heaven ascension drum obstructed him for an instant, Yin Zhaoge would immediately catch up once more. Now he could only resist with all his might, not allowing Yin Zhaoge to continue seizing the upper hand. Only then would he have a chance of turning defeat into victory. Having gained the upper hand, Yin Zhaoge rushed into the nine-headed bug's middle plate, engaging it in close combat. The crescent moon spade in the nine-headed bug's hand was inconvenient and difficult to use. However, this great demon had his own means. The two-headed crescent moon shovel was broken in the middle, splitting into two. The nine-headed bug wielded a crescent moon spade in each hand, transforming into two clumps of silver light, which swept along numerous gales, as they surrounded Yin Zhaoge from the left and right. Open! Yin Zhaoge did not move from his original position, as he pushed his hands out to the sides of his body. The power that tore apart the universe pushed the nine-headed bug's two crescent spades away. The terrifying storm was also forcefully shattered. Instead, it was the nine-headed bug's arms that trembled and parted to the sides. He was once again in danger of having his vitals exposed to Yin Zhaoge. The nine-headed bug wanted to change its stance, but Yin Zhaoge was even faster and fiercer than that. Yin Zhaoge's palms intersected. His hands that had originally been spread apart to the sides were now gathered together once more. Moving towards his chest, he struck a second blow at lightning speed towards the nine-headed bug. The nine-headed bug only had time to cross its shovels in front of itself. However, he was a step slower than Yin Zhaoge. His movements hurried, and his strength weak. Yin Zhaoge's fists connected, one smashing apart the two crescent moons that the nine-headed bug was parrying while the other immediately punched towards his chest. This time, the nine-headed bug was unable to change his stance in time to block, as the two crescent moons in his hands flew out, shooting towards Yin Zhaoge's face. Yin Zhaoge's figure shifted to the side, avoiding one of the crescent shovels as he raised his other hand, blocking the second shovel. But his fists did not stop, and continued to hit the nine-headed bug. The 18 eyes of the nine-headed bug's 9 heads shone with a vicious light as it let out deafening roars. With a shake of his body, he revealed the heavenly law's embodiment technique, and instantly transformed into a 9-headed strange bird. In the blink of an eye, black wings covered the sky and the sun. 9 birds cried in unison, and their roars caused stars to fall. The surrounding universe appeared like a meteor shower. The roiling astral winds of the 9 heavens swept towards Yin Zhaoge, with an even more violent momentum. Gusts of strong wind interweaved in the void, and formed an ancient, profound, and unfathomable talisman inscription. Borrowing the talisman inscription, the 9-headed bug finally managed to block this punch of Yin Zhaoge's. The talisman shattered, transforming into innumerable astral winds that resembled blades once more as they surrounded Yin Zhaoge. The 9-headed bug himself intended to make use of this chance to retreat, increasing the distance between him and Yin Zhaoge, so that he could regroup. However, Yin Zhaoge combined the Grand Clear Lineage's earlier Heaven 2 manifestations, as well as the Jade Clear Lineage's later Heaven 6 scriptures as one. Bolstered by the 2 great defenses, he broke through the layers of storms and traversed space. Virtually not giving the 9-headed bug any time at all, Yin Zhaoge arrived in hot pursuit once more. A cunning and venomous look suddenly surfaced within the eyes of the 9-headed bug, who seemed to be at his wit's end, and cut a sorry figure. His 9 heads were all devouring astral winds, as they painstakingly obstructed Yin Zhaoge. 8 of them did not change. Still, one of them suddenly spat out flames from its mouth now. The flames were both gold and red, dazzling and blazing beyond compare, as they were wondrous beyond compare. The essence of earlier heavenly fire. The golden red earlier heaven fire fused with the astral winds of the 9 heavens. The wind enhanced the might of the fire, while the fire enhanced the might of the wind. The fusion of wind and fire instantly lit up a crimson gold blazing firestorm. It incinerated the heavens and struck the earth, directly burning through space and devouring everything. Just as Yin Zhaoge was about to obtain the upper hand and victory was about to be attained, the 9-headed bug suddenly turned around. At this moment, he revealed his hidden trump card, and erupted with all of his strength. He wanted to wear down Yin Zhaoge's sharpness, causing him to lower his guard before dealing a painful blow to turn the tables around. The astral winds of the 9 heavens fused with earlier heaven fire, transforming into countless golden red blades that slashed towards Yin Zhaoge's body. Previously, Yin Zhaoge had been forcibly withstanding the 9-headed bug's attacks with his own defenses. Now, however, the strength of his opponent's attacks had suddenly risen by a whole new level. Yin Zhaoge naturally wouldn't care about the attacks of a grand virtual realm opponent. However, the 9-headed bug before him was still in the grand heavenly realm. Even with Yin Zhaoge's grand clear and earlier heaven 2 manifestations as one, coupled with the jade clear later heaven world's foundation, his defenses were still pierced through by the storm of crimson gold blades. Feng Yunsheng Neza and the others suddenly looked towards Daolord Luya. The 9-headed bug's earlier heavenly fire essence must have been secretly given to him by Daolord Luya to help him refine it. No matter how arrogant the 9-headed bug had been previously, both he and Daolord Luya viewed Yin Zhaoge with utmost importance, fearing that their preparations weren't thorough enough. Now they finally had a chance to turn the tables around. The 9-headed bug flapped its wings and lunged towards Yin Zhaoge. Ha! Yin Zhaoge was fearless and didn't even stop his advance. Seeing that the 9-headed bug's defenses were pierced through, and the storm of crimson gold astral winds were about to land on his body, Yin Zhaoge didn't panic and instantly reacted. The profundities of the grand clear earlier heaven 5 manifestations manifested on his body. Yin Zhaoge's figure displayed the state of nothingness, and Tao returning to earlier heaven, appearing both transparent and formless. As the supreme Tao form was executed, the 9-headed bug's storm of attacks instantly missed. The 9-headed bug was shocked and wanted to rein in its tracks. However, a song resounded from within Yin Zhaoge's body. The song's syllables were profound and hard to decipher. Even the grand heavenly realm 9-headed bug couldn't fully comprehend it. It seemed to originate from before the creation of the heavens and earth. After being shaken by the celestial song, the 9-headed bug felt as if his soul's thoughts had slowed down by a lot and became sluggish. Yin Zhaoge's supreme Tao song, let alone the 9-headed bug, even the spectators felt as if their thoughts were obstructed when they heard this song. After snapping out of their daze, everyone couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Everyone knew that a grand virtual immortal's sonorous voice of the great Tao could suppress and affect existences beneath grand virtual immortal. However, no one had ever heard of a grand virtual immortal singing a Tao song that could suppress and affect grand heavenly immortals. Yin Zhaoge and the Taoism's people didn't pursue him either. Neza's temperament was wild and violent. Although he was unwilling to accept it, he vaguely noticed that the enemies seemed to be working together. If he were to force them, it wouldn't be good. After all, he didn't suffer any huge losses. Moreover, he even obtained the yellow earth apricot flag. Taoism had gained the upper hand this time, which made Neza's emotions calm down. Currently, he was more concerned about the outcome of the Dipankara ancient Buddha in the Western Pure Lands. Let's go and take a look. We'll also receive Taoist yang along the way. Yin Zhaoge kept the invisible dragon rod and other treasures and said, "After all, that's the Western Pure Lands." Everyone immediately went on their way and returned to the void territory outside of the Western Pure Lands. Taoist Yan's 3 purities cultivation is truly wondrous. It's truly an eye-opener for me. Neza couldn't help but praise Yin Zhaoge. Although he was prideful, he knew how strong Yin Zhaoge was now after comparing his strength with the duo flower's converged crown in the grand virtual realm. From the looks of it, you seem to be even more versatile than Taoist Yang Jian's 8-9 Mysteries art. Neza clicked his tongue in surprise. How many new supreme martial arts have you created? Yang Jian's 8-9 Mysteries art was the supreme martial art that excelled in the transformation of the fleshly body. It was ever-changing and possessed remarkable abilities. Not only was his body sturdy and unbreakable, but his physical combat prowess was also outstanding. He could even manifest many other experts' abilities, allowing him to adapt to all sorts of environments and counter all sorts of opponents. Comparatively speaking, Yang Jian's weakness was the immortal slaying flying saber. In the past, the immortal slaying flying saber was his nemesis. However, the so-called weakness was only compared to Yang Jian's own strengths. As Yang Jian learned from his own strengths, he became even stronger in this aspect. He wasn't even afraid of the immortal slaying flying saber anymore. As Neza continuously observed Yin Zhaoge's battles, he realized that Yin Zhaoge was proficient in all sorts of supreme martial arts, and was proficient in all sorts of combat styles. No matter if it was against the Shadow Devil Chu Su, or the Nine-Headed Bug, Yin Zhaoge's combat styles were all different. For a moment, Neza couldn't find any of his weaknesses. Neza couldn't help but feel curious. Little friend Yen, you seem to have some results in reversing the peerless heavenly scripture? Asked the incongruence Divine Mother, who was more concerned about another aspect. It was only when she reached the pinnacle of the grand virtual realm, and charged through the primordial heavenly tribulation, and became a grand heavenly immortal, that the influence of the 9 underworlds faded. She opened up a brand new path, but it was still connected to the 9 underworlds. Similar to Feng Yinxing and Nie Jingshan, Sua Mingzhang and Yin Di had also opened up a path of their own, which was different from their predecessors. Behind their impressive strength was a journey that required them to constantly explore and move forward. Sua Mingzhang cultivated the primordial heavenly scripture in reverse, and went one step further on this foundation, to create his own heaven-severing scripture. The so-called heaven-severing book was not just a literal act of severing the heavens. To heaven interception, one must first know heaven. It was said that destruction was always easier than construction. However, if one wanted to be like Sua Mingzhang, and do as he pleased, he must have a deep understanding of the existence he wanted to destroy. Only then could he create the most fundamental damage with the least amount of effort, without the slightest effort. His heaven-severing scripture turned complexity into simplicity, and was actually all-encompassing. However, the final embodiment of it was the word severing. As for Yen Di, he inherited the inheritance of his parents, Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian. He combined the beginning and end, and perfectly described the process of the changes of creation. Just like the sword Buddha Chu Su's Samsara sword scripture, he borrowed the opponent's karma, and tried to send the opponent into the 6 paths of reincarnation. If he succeeded, the 6 paths of reincarnation would be the real enemy that his opponent would have to face. If he was not a Dao realm bigwig, how many people could really withstand the terrifying pressure of the endless reincarnation of the creation of the world? However, Chu Su was still borrowing the opponent's strength. It was impossible for him to transform into the real 6 paths of reincarnation. His master, the previous sword Buddha, transformed into the 6 paths of reincarnation, but he only opened the door to the real reincarnation. The reason why Yen Di's creation saber was so powerful was because it perfectly matched the principle of the change of epochs of the world. It was actually able to display a trace of the magnificent phenomenon of the creation of the world. It contained the 6 paths of reincarnation, and all existences, since the creation of the world. It also contained the grand power that led to the future and the end. Other than the Dao realm bigwigs, who else could resist it? Of course, Yin Di couldn't display all of this. He couldn't add the entire creation of the world to his body. However, as his cultivation realm gradually increased, the manifestation of this aspect became more and more frequent. In the beginning, it was just a trace, but it gradually became larger and larger. Yen Di continuously studied and researched this principle during his cultivation process. It gradually became clearer and pointed out his future path. However, during this process he, as well as Yin Zhaoge and the others who often interacted with him, discovered a possible problem. Yen Di's creation saber and Sua Mingzhang's heaven-severing scripture were opposing each other, as if they were mortal enemies. Currently, everyone was doing their own thing, and didn't affect each other. However, as Yen Di's cultivation gradually increased, his path became clearer. As he looked at the path ahead, he vaguely had a premonition. When he was charging towards the Dao realm, a conflict seemed to arise between him and Sua Mingzhang. At their level, after studying the principles of the world and receiving feedback, the so-called premonition would rarely be wrong, especially when it concerned themselves. Unfortunately, Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng, who had ascended to the grand heavenly realm, had the same premonition. Taoist brother is one of the top-notch existences beneath the Tao realm. Initially, we wanted to invite you to take a look after my father transcends the origin heavenly tribulation, said Yin Zhaoge with a bitter smile. No matter if it's your father or Taoist Sua, both of them are unique in newly created supreme martial arts. I can't give a definite answer without thoroughly comprehending them, Yang Jian said. However, since your father felt the same way, the possibility of it being true is very high. In the worst-case scenario, whoever ascends to the Tao realm first would block the other's path, causing the other to have no hope of ever entering the Tao realm. Yang Jian sighed. Although it's not the same path, it's still a first-come first-serve outcome. Unless the first one is no longer around, only then can the later one continue on. If a Tao ancestor was no longer around, there would only be two possibilities. One was perishing, and the other was transcending. Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. Senior Sua has such a magnanimity. When he met my father for the first time, he might have noticed this, but he still didn't hesitate to teach him. Should I say, fortunately, it won't affect my father's origin heavenly tribulation. Yin Zhaoge slapped his head and smiled bitterly. Fortunately, it won't affect their respective grand heavenly immortal realm. Afterwards, when they had arrived in the higher worlds, the trial takers would discover that all of this pointed to the same person, the same mastermind behind the scenes. He had manifested thousands of clones, rampaging through the various worlds and plundering all life forms. And behind this, there seemed to be an even higher goal. This old devil seemed to be related to the disaster that had caused the current everlasting cloud vow to be broken in history. Thus, the long chain mission gradually drew to an end. Actually, this is already enough, Feng Yunsheng said helplessly. There shouldn't be a need for any more changes, right? How can that be? Yin Zhaoge said righteously. Such a story naturally has to have a twist at the end, a whitewash and a reason for doing so. Feng Yunsheng glanced at him impatiently. In the last segment of this chain mission, everyone discovered that the old devil had an unspeakable reason for doing so. He was the one who had painstakingly preserved the everlasting cloud, vowed to not suffer the calamity of annihilation in that great calamity. And up until now, it had also been him who had painstakingly maintained the situation and resisted the external enemies. So on and so forth. In any case, it was as lofty as it could be. Even if there was no reason, he could still make up a reason. Even if there was no story, he could still make up a story. Anyway, he wouldn't stop until he was whitewashed. If it was just like this, Feng Yunsheng certainly wouldn't mind. At most, she would feel that Yin Zhaoge was too playful and remind him to be careful not to go overboard. However, there was a problem here. That old devil was surnamed Yin. Right, it was Yin Zhaoge's own clone. Facing Feng Yunsheng's helpless gaze, Yin Zhaoge said innocently, "You can rest easy. At that time, this old devil Yin will sacrifice himself. Even if there are some details that can't be explained, death is the most important thing. No one will look into it too deeply. Everyone will only remember and revere him. Also, my projection at that time will not show my true appearance. Even if the cultivation bases of those within the everlasting cloud vow are high in the future, they will still not know that that old devil Yin is me when they go outside. You had best remember." Feng Yunsheng covered her face with her hand, her tone powerless. "It is really too shameful. We really can't afford to lose that person." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.